2 Kings chapter 6, all right? And he is going to put up all the cool figures from that to show you. And there's a funny story. There's some funny parts to this story, okay? But this really happened. Okay, do you guys know there was a real guy named Elisha? He was a prophet. Do y'all know what a prophet is?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so there was a guy named Elisha. Do you guys know what a prophet is?
Yeah.
So basically, miracles happen. But not everyone that performs a miracle is a true prophet. We are living in the end of days. Is Mevo on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're living in the end of days, which means there's also false prophets. So just because they can do a miracle doesn't automatically mean they're from God. Okay?
Yep.
There's one thing that the devil can't do, and that's create, because he himself is a created being. And so when you can see like limbs growing out and stuff like that, so don't let it read to you. Turn the audible part off. Mine does that too. So they perform miracles from God, basically, and those miracles show people that God is real. So there was a guy named Elisha. He said, the sons of the prophets. So he had some other guys that worked miracles too. And they traveled in a big group. And so they came up to Elisha and they said, this place is too small for us. Let's go out of town and make a bigger community. And so he said, can we can each take trees and logs and build our own houses? And he said, yeah, let's go. And so they crossed the Jordan. It says, let us go to Jordan. Every man take a beam from there. Let us make a place where we can dwell. He said, go. And so they were building houses, and one guy, he borrowed a tool from his friend, okay? Do you have anything like a hammer that you could give a friend if they needed it, or maybe even like a pencil sharpener or a ruler? Like say, hey, can I borrow that? But back then, an axe was really important back then because they had to melt this thing down, and then they had to sharpen it, and they were really important to have to cut things. And guess what? When he was axing the tree, the axe head flew off, and it went into the lake, or it went into the Jordan, the river. It went into the water. And so he's like, oh no, he said, Elisha, he said, alas, alas, my master. That means, oh no, my friend gave this to me. It was borrowed. And he said, where did it fall? And the man showed him where it fell. He's right there. And so he took a stick. This is a miracle from God. He cut off a stick. He threw it in the water, and the axe head float. We know that metal doesn't float, right? Not that kind of metal. And it floated to the top of the river, and they took it. He was able to give the axe back to the friend. So that's the first part of our story. So therefore he said, pick it up for yourself. And so the guy reached out with his hand and he took it. Okay, the next part is about the blind guys. Okay, now the king of Assyria.
I got it.
Okay, the king of Assyria was making war against Israel. So if you've ever seen a war room before, the kings and all his general and all of the people that work for his army. Hey, have you guys ever played Battleship?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. Like they have a location on the map where they say, okay, we're going to go here, we're going to go here, and we're going to trap these guys. And so they were at war with Israel. Israel is God's people. And so he decided he was going to make his camp in a certain place, and the Israelites were going to be there and get trapped. And so Elisha, the man of God, he went to the king of Israel, and he told him where the Assyrian king was going to trap his troops. And the Assyrian king got mad, and he said, okay, who's the spy? He goes, speak now. Who is the spy that's telling Israel's king where my troops are going to be? And so none of them were spies. These were still bad guys, but they weren't spies. They were the Assyrian king's soldiers. And then one of them said, there's a prophet in the land of Israel named Elisha, and he knows exactly what you're saying, even in your own bedchamber. God tells him, and he tells the king of Israel where you're going to go. And so he said, where is that guy? Go find him. And they said, he lives in Dothan. He said, okay, we're going to catch him. And so they're out there, and they surround this place. So imagine a city back then is not as big as a city today, so it's more like a village. So Elisha is just in his house, and he's got his buddy with him that works for him.
Go wake up Elijah.
Kind of like that. And so they said, he's not in there. And so Elisha has a roommate, basically. This is his employee that goes and gets things and works for him. And guess what? They got up one morning, and it said he got up early in the morning. All of a sudden just imagine he hears like a horse, like off in the distance, and he looks up at the hills around their house. It is covered with armies and horses and chariots. And he's like, oh no. And he goes back inside because he knew what that meant. Those guys were coming to kill him and Elisha. He goes back inside. So the servant of the man of God rose early and went out, and there was an army surrounding the city with horses and chariots. His servant said to him, alas, alas, my master, we're in deep trouble. Can everyone say, deep trouble?
Deep trouble.
Eulalia, can you say, deep trouble? Deep trouble. What are we going to do? How are we going to escape this army? So Elisha said, shh, calm down, calm down, calm down. He said, don't be afraid. That's the first thing you need to do, boys and girls. Whenever you have something that's going to make you afraid, you have a choice in your heart to not be afraid. And the reason you don't need to be afraid is because God lives inside of you, and he made this world, which means he can make you win. He can make you conquer whatever is after you that's making you have a bad day. He can make you not have to be afraid. And so he said, do not fear. He said, Elisha prayed and said, because this is called his servant in the Bible, but that means his employee, okay? He said, open my servant's eyes so that he can see the spirit realm. And so the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw. And behold, which means look, or obviously. He said, behold, there were angels that were way more than the soldiers that were in the hills around them. And then what happened was Elisha said, strike this people. So the Syrians called him down. The mountain was full of chariots of fire. Can you imagine? Or soldiers that are on fire. These guys were from heaven. They were covered with the glory of God, and there was way more of them than there were soldiers on the hills. And so, have you ever seen Lord of the Rings? It's kind of a scary movie for guys your age, but imagine something like that where they thought they were done. That this bad army is overtaking them, and they look, and all of a sudden help comes. Help is coming from heaven. These angels are coming to defend them. And so Elisha prayed and said, strike these soldiers with blindness. And they all became blind. And they said, where's Elisha? And he said, you're in the wrong city. And he led all of them. He said, I'll take you to the right city. He took them into the Israel city where all their soldiers are. And then he said, God, give them back their sight. And they could see again, and they look around. They're not in Dothan to attack Elisha. They actually realize that they're in the middle of the Israelite army that they were trying to attack. And they were sitting ducks, basically. There's no way the Syrian army could have escaped Israel, even though they came to attack them. They went into their battleground, basically. And so they were like, what are we going to do? And the king said, Elisha, the Israel king, not the bad king, but the good king, said to Elisha, he said, should I kill them? Should I kill them? And he prayed, and he said, no. He said, we're not going to kill them. He said, feed them, give them water. And so they got their sight back, but they got to see that God is real and more strong than them. And they got food and water, and then he told them to go back home. And it said they didn't attack them again for a long time. It says, then they prepared a great feast for them, and after they ate and drank, he sent them away, and they went to their master. So the bands of the Syrian raiders came no more into the land of Israel.
Bye, kids. We'll see you next time.